Coleman.
Here.
Ms. Herring. Mr. Nicely.
Here.
Ms. Riviera. Ms. Van Gundy.
Here.
Councilman Rohr.
Here.
Vice Chairman Hatton.
All right, I'd like to motion that we excuse the absences of Ms. Herring, Mr. Hatton, and Ms. Riviera.
Second.
I guess actually, am I allowed to do that? As,
Sure.
Yeah.
Temporary.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, we take a vote.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy.
Yes.
Councilman Rohr.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I know item 2 on your agenda is election of officers. Given the fact that we don't have a chair or the vice chair here this evening, and you're sitting in the catbird seat, Mr. Coleman, what I'd ask you to do is just take a quick vote for you to be acting chair for this meeting.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
So move.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, let's have a vote.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy.
Yes.
Councilman Rohr.
Yes.
For the record, I think Elaine put your nameplate there, just, for the record.
Thanks, Elaine.
And then item 2 on election of officers, I would recommend that you simply skip over this item if you're of a mind, there's only 4 of you here today, and I would always recommend that you have the full body here. Plus, you're getting a brand new member in Ms. Herring. I think in July she could be.
Yeah.
Up to you.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Let's make her the chair.
Oh, welcome, Madam Chairwoman.
So as a point of order, do we need a motion for that to table or just skip it?
You could just skip it if that's the
I'll make note.
consensus.
All right, great. All right, third on the business is approval of the motion summary from the February 2018 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes, and does anybody have any corrections or concerns? If not, would somebody like to motion approval?
So moved.
Second. All right, let's have a vote.
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy. Yes. Councilman Rohr.
Yes.
And Chairman Coleman.
Yes. All right. First item of regular business, item 2018-0086, a request by the Flying Pig Ale House for certificate of appropriateness for a temporary sidewalk vestibule for 12 South Sandusky Street, which is Zone B2, Central Business District, and located in the downtown core sub-district of the Downtown Historic District Overlay. I understand they have withdrawn that application.
They have, so you just have to do 2 quick things if you're of a mind. Number 1, officially move, second, vote to take it off the table so we can discuss it. And after you've presumably done that, then if you're of a mind, I would move and second to accept the withdrawal, and that'll kill it.
All right. So, can we have a motion to table?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Acting Chairman. I'll move to take item 2018-0086 off of the table for place January 24th.
Second.
All right. And we have a motion and a second. Can we take a vote, please?
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy.
Yes.
Councilman Rohr.
Yes.
Chairman Coleman.
Yes. And as for the discussion, I think, and I think this was part of the recommendations of staff, was that we need to start discussing having standards for vestibules, as that seems to be something that is now of interest to a number of people downtown. With the reversal, I guess, of the failure of the 12 West vestibule to pass the previous meeting, it seems that we have one now, and several other merchants have expressed interest over the last couple of years. So it is something that's probably not going to go away, And I guess from the standpoint of staff, what are your thoughts in terms of how we would go about promulgating standards?
Sure. I still, I've given you this opinion before, I still think it's going to be difficult to come up with standards for these things that apply to very different conditions within the downtown. However, as we've noted before, I think we had some emerging consensus around color, material. Perhaps we could talk about sub-districts, application in particular sub-districts and not in other sub-districts of the historic district. And then it gets a little more difficult in terms of trying to decide, do we want standards around storefronts that are only less than 22 feet wide or less, or, stuff like that. I think might get a little bit hard, and you might have to take these all a little bit case by case, but you can start putting some standards around it. So I'm not sure tonight is on the fly as a way to do it, but we can, I can have staff start to draft some of those up and bring it back in subsequent meetings for consideration. It would just basically be update of the guidelines.
Yeah, and I think just given the previous discussions, among ourselves, when we've had a full body, that there's a lot of different opinions about, the appropriateness of vestibules, number one, and how to, essentially come up with standards if they are going to be a part of, the downtown going forward. So
just to note, these are complicated by the fact that they're typically not on private property. They're on the public sidewalk. Of course, we had an appeal of 12 West vestibule to council, and I think council was of a mind that the vestibule is okay. But I think, and Mr. Rohr, Councilman Rohr, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think council was wrestling with some of the same kind of things you were. Where, when, what do they look like? How do we decide these things? So I think that would be helpful to advance that discussion at any rate. And this seems like the body to start that discussion.
Yeah.
To me.
Any other?
I would only add for staff that I certainly concur with that opinion. I think it would be good to start that discussion at the level of staff and then bring back some ideas for the commission to discuss and hopefully get to that point where we do have some bare minimum standards, at least to give us guidance, particularly in the wake of council's decision 2 months ago.
Can do.
I can tell you the council was unanimous, weren't they, Dave, when we
I think so.
unanimously passed? I can tell you that for me, the distinction that made that one different was that 12 West is not in the core district.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think council is pretty clear that they're of a mind to approve these in some way, shape, or form. So I think we need to, as a commission, talk about standards and things like that.
One thing I think that would be helpful for me, and probably particularly for the newer folks that might not have been on the commission when we initially had the discussion of 12 West Vestibule when it was initially granted, is if we could pull out, some of the minutes from those discussions from the archives and have those as part of a future packet so that we can give some history, some context to what the discussion, how the discussion started, what the concerns were, what the thoughts were in terms of, initially granting that as a beta test. And, try to, see how much of that is relevant to the discussion of what the standard should be going forward.
And I think staff, we can maybe synthesize that, summarize it, and also give you a summary of council's discussion in their vestibule decision that they've given all of us. We have the full context.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just pull together.
Great. Any other comments? Okay. In that case, do we have a motion to accept the withdrawal of item 2018-0086?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a vote, please.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy? Yes. Councilman Rohr?
Yes.
Chairman Coleman?
Yes. Item 2, item 2018-1514. A request by Cohatch Delaware Community Space LLC for an informal review for proposed exterior renovations at 18 East William Street, which is Zone B2, Central Business District, and located in the transitional sub-district of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Does staff have a report?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I have a lengthy PowerPoint, but I think that's really more as we need to reference different pieces of it. I don't want to spend all of our time going through this tonight, as this is just an informal review, and I'm sure, given my history with this body, you all have done your homework probably in excess of what we've done as staff. I also could never do as good a job as Diane with these particular reports, and so I don't want to embarrass myself, but I will tell you that this is the Cohatch project, which is a co-working space. Matt can correct me on that, but co-working space with the Gazette building that the City of Delaware owns right next door. The long-term plan is emerging that city offices would be on the second floor, essentially, perhaps with some connection from this building over to there. And that for right now, what's going on is renovation in the basement and the first floor of that building in support of the Cohatch business project. And so that's the reason for the informal review in front of you today. Still our building, City of Delaware's building. Want to just mention very quickly, Jackie Walker, Assistant City Manager, is with us tonight, and she coordinates all the city's construction projects. And so that's why she's here tonight, and she's helping to coordinate this one. This is obviously a complicated one, a little bit different model for us as a community, and took a long time to get to this point. So it's exciting to see, for me, to see it moving forward, and I'm sure exciting for the Cohatch crew out here to see it moving forward in physical format. However, we have talked about from the beginning, and they've known the need to come with exterior changes to the HPC for approval. And so this is the first. We were intending to maybe come with formal action tonight, but as it turns out, there are some options for things in your packet, as you see, and I think it made sense to us all as a city team and a Cohatch team to come and just have an informal discussion with you, as you often do, and get some feedback from you all in terms of what you may or may not want to see or what fits the guidelines. We can then button up a formal application with Cohatch and bring it back to you presumably in July and still keep the project moving on a timeline. So all that summary, just we all know where it is. It's right next door at 18 East West William. It's in the B2 Downtown Commercial District. It is in the transitional sub-district of the Historic District overlay. The building was built in approximately 1951 by the records we can find. And I would note for you, just pausing on aerial photographs, that the area in front, because I think we're probably going to spend most of our time talking about that tonight, if I had to guess, the patio, proposed patio, on the renderings appears to my eye much bigger than what the physical space is really out there. It's about 20 feet deep is what we're talking about, just to put that in front of you a little bit. I think the renderings were well done. They just sort of give a feeling that it's a lot more space than it really is out there. And that's the space between the sidewalk and the front of the door, basically, as it sits today. As I say, we have some pictures for you, and there's about 7 parameters that they're asking to do. Brick and limestone cleaning in a gentle format that we think meets the guidelines of staff. We think that could be potentially administratively approvable, looking for some direction from you in that regard. Number 2, adding an ADA lift around the east side of the project, kind of near the loading dock and what will be the members-only door into Cohatch. Again, that's an ADA improvement, and we believe, again, that could be potentially administratively approvable. Looking for feedback. There'll be there's actually 7 entry doors to this building, believe it or not, scattered around the building. We've all discovered a little bit through this project, a little bit more than we all thought. Those will be retained, refinished, repainted in keeping with the overall painting scheme. Again, we as staff feel that could potentially be administratively approvable, looking for your feedback. Window replacement. There's apparently, at final count here, or potentially final count, 45 windows in that building. And as it turns out, they're not all of the same variety and size and opening and all that kind of good stuff, as we all know with old buildings. But that's a bigger number than I guessed at originally, so that was interesting. They would be replaced with exterior black finish, aluminum clad windows, double hung, full screens in them, so unlike City Hall, they'd be operable, and you'd be able to get wind flow through there, airflow through there. They would have simulated divides or mullions with a 7/8 inch thick divides. Basically matches the City Hall divides you see here. So from the exterior, they would appear as if they are true divides. They will be true double hung windows and operable. And then they would be in a 9/9, 6/6 configuration, depending on the window opening size. There are a few funky windows, if you will, and those will simply be restored, as those are just custom window openings, and there's nothing else to be done with those. So those, I think, again, those meet all of our guidelines, and from staff's perspective, could be administratively approvable and looking for your direction. That one particular element with the doors, if we could do those administratively, might allow them to order those things and get that process moving a little bit in advance of July. So that's why I just throw that out there to you for discussion purposes. So then let's talk, and you can see I have all these pictures if we need to go through. Here's one of the funky windows. One interesting thing, they found 2 unentombed windows, and on the west side, which will be unentombed. I guess they were tombed, and now they'll be unentombed. They were in the tomb, they'll be unentombed, but they'll be replaced. So that's pretty cool. So let's talk about the patio. So there are 2 options with the patio. Both present a pergola. And it is, to our mind as staff, a true sort of pergola approach, not an awning or a canopy, or sometimes we can get mired in those definitions, but neither one of them are attached to the building. So it is a true pergola in this case, even though we're talking about 20 feet deep. One is more parallel with William Street, and one is more perpendicular with William Street, to summarize it. From a staff's perspective, here's option 2. Option 2 probably what they'd like to do is create a little bit of defensible space that feels separate, but is separate from the sidewalk, defensible from the sidewalk, but still it is usable for their purposes. Still helps define the space. It's just open bricks right now, and sort of landscaping that isn't that great and that sort of thing. But really create a seating and a gathering place out front. Staff's opinion is that option 2 probably better fits. We don't have pergola guidelines, as you know, but probably better fits the overall design and aesthetic and guidelines of our code and our city. We would have 2 changes to what they've shown here. The pickle green co-hatch sign that's perpendicular, shown here is perpendicular to William Street, we would recommend would be essentially parallel to William Street and kind of inside the line of the pergola. So it's not hanging out over the sidewalk, for example, but it's there. You can see it. They do the auto-oriented blade sign, and they can have the pedestrian-oriented sign as well. It's just more a matter of how. And it could be a rendering thing, but the fence around the patio here is shown as sort of a more modern rail fence, but the detail shown more as our historic, presumably aluminum, could be steel, whatever. But the style of the fence is more in keeping with what we would have with our sidewalk patios and with our guidelines in terms of its design. So we would recommend that design fence be used rather than what's shown in the rendering. But other than that, they would add some landscaping and some areas for seating. Not a little bit different adaptation, and some bistro lights. All right, a little bit different adaptation than we've seen for Bag of Nails, Buns Patio, or the I guess I'll call it the Plaza Patio across the street, for lack of, since we don't have a tenant to reference right now. The old Brooklyn Heights Patio. Sure. So those are different kinds of patios that have some structures on them. Some of them have lesser or greater structures. This is definitely a different kind of space, but it's staff's opinion. It really does, it's not doing anybody any favors the way it's sitting now, and it could benefit from being activated space. And that fits their business model as well, and I think could present a very nice front door to downtown, if you will, coming off William Street. Again, it's only about 20 feet deep. The last two things are rear signage. Again, it's sort of a pedestrian-oriented sign here at the members-only entrance on the east side of the building. This makes sense to us, and it would be in the pickle green of Cohatch. And it would help separate these 7 doors and different ways to get in and out of the building and clearly communicate this is where the members go in. Makes sense. Faces our parking lot currently. And then the other thing we might need to spend a little bit of time on, and had 2 options, is the west side sign. That would be right on the side of the building, right outside these windows of chambers. The initial proposal and the words indicate painting the sign on the brick. The applicant's well aware that painting brick is verboten in our guidelines and in our regulations, as cool as it may or may not look to anybody. And so in communicating with the applicant in the lead up, you'll see the write-up in the staff report suggests that this, if we're of a mind to approve this, it would need to be no more than 20 square feet to conform with our guidelines for signage that face a parking lot. It's a little weird here because it's all our property, but there's a parcel line between the two, but that's okay. It faces a parking lot, so we can sort of get over that. But 20 square feet, and you could get the same look and put it on some form of backer board and affix that to the building, and I think not paint the brick or do something else that may harm the brick in the long run, and still get kind of the same newsstandy, cool look that I think they're going for. Happy to give you a full half-hour thing, but I think I'm going to stop right there and let Matt Davis and these guys talk about their project. Jackie might want to add something. I think you just have to have a dialogue on those things from now. So I yield to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, before we bring the applicants forward, does anybody have any questions for city staff? I've got one question and one suggestion.
Okay.
Just the one question is on item 1, the cleaning, I guess, chemical used. It sounds pretty benign, and if we were to do that as an administrative approval, would the city be, I guess, verifying or validating what was actually being used prior to its application to ensure that it actually does meet with architectural standards?
Absolutely. We did that when we renovated this building, so we're familiar with the process that works. So it's the same brick.
Great. The comment I've got is the suggestion on the windows that possibly those could be administratively approved. Personally, I think that should be part of the formal application, and that should actually, I think windows have always been kind of tricky and sometimes contentious, and I think that would be better to actually have that as part of the formal application so that we can discuss those in depth. And one comment I would have is, typically when I see, 6/6 windows, I kind of think of those as more of a colonial revival, throwback, and I'm not sure on a 1951 building that, those are the best fit. But that's something maybe to be discussed, and I'm not sure how others feel about that. But that was probably the biggest thing that caught my eye in terms of the windows. As far as improving, I think the basic window that you're proposing is an improvement. I think that actually is a good choice in terms of the black aluminum. I think it'll look good, but again, I think that what I would say, the fake mullions are something that I'm, not too keen on. Again, just speaking for myself personally, to me it seems incongruous with the actual architectural style of the former dispatch building.
Sure.
I don't come to HPTT, so let me just try to explain that a little bit, and I know that we're going to have it in the formal discussion, is that the designer's plans were to make the two buildings seem more like they begin to look like a campus, right? And so that's what we have here in this building. We have the fake Moyans in this building. This is a much older building. But I think that the idea is to make this look like a campus, start like more like a campus. And one thing that you don't see in this concept drawing, which Dave briefly alluded to, is that we are here in the next month or so, we're going to be bringing to HPC a connector bridge between the two buildings. And so these two buildings will act as one to get to the second floor of the, it'll be the planning department. You will, if you need to use an elevator, you'll actually use the elevator here in City Hall, cross the bridge and get over to the other building, which makes it handicap accessible. And so I think that the idea between having the two buildings to look a little similar, but then we're calling it the City Hall Annex, making it have a little bit of pop to it because it does have an individual business to it. I think that's where they were going. So, you know, that was a lot of discussion with staff, just so you don't think they did. It's really what we had all talked about, that these two buildings are going to start acting as one campus.
And I could follow on with a question. City Hall, was it built in the late 1940s? Is that correct?
No, it was actually, it didn't burn completely down in the 1800s. It actually, there were pieces and parts to it still there. And so we renovated it in '93. I would have to go back and give you the whole history, but there's parts of this building that were here much earlier than that.
Well, the building itself is from the Depression era, like a works project administration
I think so.
building.
Yeah.
So, because the 19th century one actually did get raised. This was put up sometime in the 30s, I think.
I thought it was a little earlier than that, but you know what? I can check on my
it's right in
history
there.
when we renovated it.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the point I was going for is not quite the same era because it would have been more in the 1930s, but the windows here, I don't know what they originally looked like in the 1930s, but the building itself mostly is a 1930s era building. So it's not that far off from 1951.
not too far, right?
If we were to think of it that way, possibly.
Right.
All right. Again, those are just some thoughts I had, and I do appreciate, Jackie. That's some, I think, some really good
Some
insight
insight.
into, what the process was and what the thought,
Yeah,
the
and that's
thought
what,
process in terms of, coming up with that design. So
yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, is that
Yeah.
we've had a lot of discussions, and so been very collaborative and cooperative together. So that's where we landed on that.
Sure.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Actually, yes, I do have one question for staff before we invite the applicants to speak, and that is, I know in the packet here you mentioned there's a staff preference for option 2 when it comes to the patio designs. It's one that more is a narrow projecting pergola. I was wondering if staff could give us a little more clarity on what your decision-making process, or what your thinking is, rather, on why that is preferred.
Sure. We understand the need or the desire, I guess it's not a need, the desire for a pergola or something to set that space off, but also to sort of have the cool factor that's sought after here and provide kind of the entryway into the formal door in the middle of the building. We think that having it oriented toward that door and straight out perpendicularly to the street kind of provides that function a little bit better, but also minimizes the pergola a little bit in comparison to option 1. And the pergola doesn't really provide a lot of sunshade or weather cover. It's just there it can do a little bit of that, but it is there as a design adaptation, really. And there would probably, in the real world, at the end of the day, be some umbrellas and other things that find their way out on the patio, I imagine. It's sunny out there, and so that would be a natural thing, not any different than our sidewalk cafes and those sorts of things, although this is private property. So that's something we may want to talk about too. And so I can see 2 black umbrellas or something on either side of this pergola, and the design is pretty unified. and still does what the applicant seeks it to do. Are there other ways to do that? Could you stick a black awning all across this building? You could. I'm not sure that would look design-wise make any sense to us with respect to the age and design of this building. So that's basically where we're coming from. We also liked we kind of found a fit with the bistro light portion of this, believe it or not. And I know it feels a little minimized in the renderings, but that kind of tied it in for us a little bit better with some of what we're seeing in the sidewalk patios. Again, I know this is not a sidewalk. It kind of gave that feel a little bit more to it. And not having the pergola across it allows you to kind of do that a little bit better with the bistro light. So that's where we were coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I do have a question. What are the hours of the Cohatch going to be?
Cohatch members can come and go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a member's card access.
Okay.
City staff upstairs come and go sometime.
They're not here
Jackie?
24 hours. Yeah, some days.
Look, we're here all the time.
Any other questions for staff? All right, so if no further questions, is there somebody from would somebody from the applicant's party care to come up, or all of you if you wish?
We speak here, we have both here.
You have to come up, please, and to give your name and address for the minutes.
We'll rotate.
Yeah, oh, you can pull
You can pull
Come
the
there,
chairs
yeah.
up.
Yeah, come on up.
It's a party.
Or
I'll get
rotate.
comfortable.
Matt Davis, you say name, address?
Name and address, please.
Matt Davis, 4620 Hickory Rock Drive, Powell, 43065.
Joel Lyons, 283 East North Street, Worthington, Ohio, 43085.
Terry Higgender for 18290 Burger Road, Marysville.
All right, thank you. I guess before we proceed with any questions Commission may have, would you care to add, do you have anything you would like to add to Dave's presentation, or
Sure, just
fill that in a little more?
real quick. I mean, the first thing I want you to know is our whole mission with Cohatch is to strengthen communities, improve lives, and we do that through restoring and repurposing buildings like this and creating modern town halls. So we take this process of restoring this building very seriously. That's why we're here to try to get the best product possible. That's why we usually don't present just one option. So there is two, so there is some sort of discussion on how to do it. But to give you a little feel for the space, we do push, we want to maintain historical integrity as best we can. We also, to be fair, we do push the envelope a little bit because we're trying to set up the next 50 years, not just backwards but forwards. So a lot of the stuff that we do does have function, like this patio and the pergola does have a function for us, and we can talk about that here in a second. But the signage is an ode to the building, so we're open, we're very flexible on a lot of these things. One of the things that I'll let Joel leads our design is that one of the things I felt very strongly about is that when you are on a patio, technology is LCD screens and laptops. It's hard to see in the sun. So you do need some sort of shade cover, right? That's why we do pergolas. The reason we don't do umbrellas is because we are 24/7. If there's a storm, I can't go maintain the umbrella. I can't put it away. I can't do it. I'm not there like a restaurant maintaining it. So we need more firm structures. And I also thought that I really challenged them with, like, we want to leave that big granite or limestone entry because it's beautiful, but the whole building's face is closed off. So how do you make that whole front kind of stand out a little bit differently without messing with that was one of the themes. And that if you look at the pergola, we do want to kind of make a statement. We do have events. We will have some things in the evening. We want people to be seen there downtown and enjoy being there. That's why I personally like two better because it's going to cost us less money, but one, but they're both interesting. So we really want your feedback, and we brought the whole team up here who are in charge of building it and designing it to hear it directly from you. So thank you very much.
All right. Do either of you have anything you want to add to that before we?
I mean, we could kind of go through these, I guess, section by section.
Yeah, I think so.
Stay on this area with it.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and take them in sequential order and see where we get. And I think, as staff has indicated, some of these probably can just be done through administrative approval. So We may not have to spend a whole lot of time on them. As far as, the brick and limestone cleaning repair, that seems pretty straightforward for admin approval, as does the ADA.
The
I'm sorry.
SBS's role has been submitted for both chemicals, and what we use is called Hoxie. So it's low pressure. We're worried about trying to hit it with high pressure and ruin that mortar.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do it with the two chemicals that we presented, and do it with a hot wash, just to rinse it down. So, and then we'll come back in and tuck in all the damaged part of the mortar.
Yeah.
There's some areas that need like caulking added prior to it, some epoxy caulking, and then tuck it in with mortar.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that you guys are going to be taking that on, and actually, I think that's probably some maintenance that was deferred in the latter years of the Gazette, and I'm sure
We do
there's.
have to get up on the top fairly soon, because we got a brand new roof up there, and we have to, before we can finish that roof, we have to clean that.
Sure.
So up there, so that's a hot item.
If you look at this historical photos, you see how crisp that it was from the limestone to the brick, and we're excited to get back to that for sure.
Yeah.
Some of the limestone, some of the stone, especially on the side, the lower is pretty damaged. We won't be able to repair it, but we can clean it up.
Yeah.
Get it back as good as we can.
Does anybody have any questions on the item 1, the limestone, the brick and limestone cleaning repair? And as far as the ADA entrance, I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, that you have to have that, and it seems like a pretty inconspicuous area that you're having it, and there are certainly regulations that dictate how that's going to have to be designed. Again, I think the indication was that could be an administrative approval. Does anybody on the commission have any questions about that?
I do not.
Right. The West Side Utilities location, good riddance to the telephone poles, I think. Again, that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you'd think, but no.
Well, I mean, in terms of this, straightforward, not in terms of the HPCs.
In terms
part
of the
that.
HPC, you're right, Joe. In terms of our lives, no.
Okay.
So while we're on here, I just want to, number 3 affects number 8. And because we are moving all of that utility, we have to set a transformer where the dumpster is. If you look out back here, so the dumpster will actually now be relocated to where you see in the picture, just a little bit ahead of where the motorcycle now sits in this picture. So just for you guys to know that when you actually, I'm not sure what the commission's going to say about doing this, but understand that we're going to have to put the transformer where the dumpster is, and the dumpster's going to have to move forward. Okay.
It's to that corner, no?
Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry, Dave.
Might
That's right, I have a hard
be
time seeing the
right there.
motorcycle.
Yeah, do you see, well, the motorcycle's not in this picture.
Okay.
So it's like right at the end of that pad. So we're moving 3 poles. Yeah, so the transformer will sit where the dumpster is now, Joel, okay? Just FYI.
Jackie, we're still gonna do the same surround of the dumpster we have, and I think we have brick around the side. We got the window,
Sure.
I don't even remember.
Yeah,
I think there's brick around the side of it.
yep. We're going to, yeah. We're
It'll
going
look the same as it's gonna.
It'll look exactly the same.
Yeah, and I mean, we can, with the administrative approval, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it if you decide, you like the poles and you want the dumpster to remain where it is. So, I mean, that's
Yeah,
certainly
yeah, we feel
not
good
closing
about
that option off.
I guess I just wanted to mention mostly for
Yeah.
Joel before I forgot that with your design there, so. Yes, the poles will be moved.
So I'm curious, with the dumpster, if it does get moved to that new location, will it still be enclosed in some
Yes,
sort of a?
it'll look just like it's
Okay.
looking now.
All right.
Yep, it absolutely
Because I
will.
see there, it's a
And
door.
FYI, the plan is that we're going to share our dumpster so that we don't have to create another dumpster space on the east side of the City Hall Annex. We're going to share our dumpster with this team, so as to cut down on the amount of dumpsters that actually have to be on this campus.
Yeah, nice.
We haven't come to.
Save you parking space.
Saves a parking space.
All right. For entry.
Number 4, the entry doors. And again, I think was that one that you felt administrative approval would be sufficient.
so.
I mean, the doors, I presume, would meet with standards.
Yep, the only real change, they're preserving all the doors, reusing them. The only real change is to the colors, urban bronze, and then the pickle for the doors that are
Okay, so
their
yeah.
entryway.
Yeah.
So some of the doors that you see in this picture were not, they were there, but they were covered with plywood.
Right.
And some of those doors, we're going to keep the doors, but we're not going to make them functional.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And then also, I did even go over the loading dock. One of the proposals of the loading dock is that, those doors would come out and presumably there would be some glass or sliding doors or some type of other door of that manner put in place of the loading dock. That would get light back there, make it look a little better. And that was probably the major change to the doors.
Yeah.
And speak real quick to the colors as well, if you guys want. The color we're proposing on the William Street side and the west side is urban bronze, essentially like a warm gray moving towards brown. It's a color that we've used a lot in Cohatch, and it's kind of one of our brand colors for environment space. And when we can, in the past, we've used this green color on doors that aren't necessarily, we want to be respectful of the main strip and not, splash a bunch of the colors on that main front strip, but using it on the kind of the one around the back for members only. So it's kind of tucked around the corner, but it represents our main entry for members. And we've done that in the past, and we try to keep that green to very strategic locations. So that's why we have it on that one location.
Okay.
I think from my perspective, I think the color scheme there is very nice. I like the idea that you would be using urban bronze on more of the visible entryways, especially. I think it'll go well with the aluminum clad windows if those do end up being black. I think it'll blend in well with the whole look of the downtown and of the brick. So I would be fine with those.
Any questions on the?
Do you, on the loading dock, I just want to be clear, I think the windows are all, whether functional or doors, whether functional or not, are all administratively approvable as they're proposed. The loading dock, I think some of the other window discussions in that regard we've had in downtown, do you want that maybe a little better detailed out in addition, coming back to you for formal approval? That would be consistent with your past decisions. If you think it can be administratively approvable, of course, we're all open to that.
Well, you really don't have a final design for it anyway at this
No, I don't
point,
think
so it probably would be something better to include in the packet, I would think.
Okay, so the doors.
It's not really visible from the public ways, but it's a big opening there.
Yeah.
So the doors are administratively approvable with the exception of the loading dock.
Yep.
Okay, good.
So just so you know, we'll probably bring it back anyway, because one of the plans that the city hasn't seen yet, they need to approve first for being the landlord, is that outside of that door would be a little sitting area. So as the door opens, you could sit and have a little meeting outside that dock door. So therefore, we'd have to show them how we would design that and view what it looks like to have the door. So it's kind of, just so you know, that's basically designed to be a meeting room. So when you're in a meeting, you'd open the whole thing up and have an indoor-outdoor meeting room and outdoor sit space. It's going to be pretty slick. It's one of those things, that design features that we have to finish out.
Yeah, no, I mean, the concept sounds awesome. I think, it's a good use, and bringing the outside in, and, I really, from my perspective, I think the general concept of what you guys are doing to this building is a real improvement to make it functionally relevant again.
Matt, is there any problem in bringing back that door and outside space then with July's?
There's no lead time issue with something. We're well within it with that window.
You're going to have to pick something.
Yeah, so I think it's fine. But.
Windows have a 5 to 6 week lead time, and that's because I have people who's going to be yelling at me about my schedule. So, something that.
Anyone in this room?
No, I'm not going to name any names.
Yeah.
The whole interesting with the whole product is the city and council have to approve what we do to put it in anyway.
Yeah.
So then we have to bring, that's kind of a circular loop. And
Is there any feeling from the commission on roll-up door, accordion door? I'm trying to remember all our discussions on these. I guess sliding door. It's probably the three varieties of.
Yeah.
Like a folding door.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, similar to what they did at Restoration maybe, or, I mean, you could even do something like that, could you not?
Or I'm thinking about Facilities patio with the glass roll, you call them garage roll-up
We
doors.
talked about that those interfere with lights on the inside, so we're trying to avoid that for that specific.
I'm just- Is there any feeling one way or the other to give them direction on what they may have to pick for this?
You know,
That might lead them.
yeah, that's on the, so that's on the west elevation, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
It's visible from the, air quotes here, public parking lot that's going to not be
Yeah.
open necessarily to public.
No, east elevation, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's, okay, it's on this side. Okay, I'm sorry, okay.
The church is the only thing.
So,
You can see it from Colony House or from the church, but it's not visible from a public way.
yeah.
Yeah, it's tucked back in the corner.
But
Yeah.
if you have them, you should tell them, I think, if you have any feelings.
I mean, to me, it's, I don't know if you could do something similar to what was currently there that would be functional for your use or whatever, but, I don't know, any thoughts?
I'm of two minds, I guess. For my part, one is given that it was a loading dock, if there was a way to make it still have that appearance in some way, but as you mentioned, that might interfere with the lighting, in which case I think I would be more inclined to see more of some sort of a doors that would open.
That's what they do now. The loading dock actually has.
Oh, does it?
They can
It loads,
close it.
Yeah.
it
Well, then-
loads to the inside, right?
And then that
Okay.
solves both of my issues.
I mean,
It's more historical looking to me anyway than a sliding door or such, so.
Yeah, but is your intent to essentially get something different in there or what? I
It
mean,
was, we would be happy with putting one door in a glass, open, so it's just one, or do a French door, double door. Those
I mean, what
both
about
work.
something similar to what's in the middle picture there near the dumpster? Is that-
Yeah, just like a French door.
I mean, I think if you could do something, similar to that, to me, that would, I mean, there's a precedent for it on the building.
I think the biggest thing for us is it's a really small little patio, so it's got a little, like, a couple chairs and a table. The doors take up space when they open.
Yeah.
So one thought was to do a single door, even maybe we do a slightly larger door or something to open, so we have more usable space on that pad versus just swing area, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think if you could get a vertical, like folding door, match the same as the windows.
Like an accordion type door.
Yeah,
Kinda like
the same,
Restoration.
maybe
Right.
6-on-6 kind of, whatever, grids, yeah.
I mean, I think we can, I'm gonna shoot it down because it's gonna be twice as much, but like, I just know the process. It's just, at the end of the day, I think probably like, most likely some sort of painted green doors like that you lock one, you let one open, but it still looks like a double door, will probably be the most
I mean,
affordable.
I guess to me, it's, right now, it's a loading dock, it's a utilitarian, previous life, it was a utilitarian application and the doors reflect a utilitarian usage. So, I mean, it's not, to me, I think you got a lot of leeway in terms of what you could do there creatively that would work with your space requirements in terms of getting the light in there and the accessibility to the outdoor patio.
We rolled out, like, those are totally unfunctional.
We open and close them now. They're just in really bad shape. Yeah, they're really bad.
Yeah, because you want light in there during the weekend, 24/7, not just in summer.
I'll maybe save a
That's
little
hoping I
on
get-
purple on
but-
that, spend a little on
Yeah.
that. Comes out.
There you go, it's a lot.
Got it. But we'll wait for him back anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll usually show one or two options. That's not like any huge sticking point for us other than just like practicality. So we can maybe look at one or two things.
And we're looking to keep, the big bumpers, to keep that look still.
Yeah.
It's just gonna change the inside.
I just think in terms of process, it's important to pick a way that you think you want to go. Yeah, some design leeway is what I'm hearing, and make it part of the package for July for the overall approval. So you don't have to come back. It's on you. I can't recall other loading dock doors that we've ever discussed in this regards.
Regardless, it's gonna be.
It's a little unusual.
Trust us.
I think sort of, I'm of that mind, if it looks good and it kind of ties in with the overall vibe of the building, it seems pretty reasonable. It's a fairly hidden loading dock, so,
Not visible.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost hesitant to like suggest things because I don't want to shut off other options for you. I think, you know, there is some flexibility, but, you know, so come up with a couple options that you think would fit the budget and serve your needs, and then we can take a look at it with the package. And
Thank you.
any other comments, questions from the commission? All right. Moving right along. Again, the window replacements, that would be part of the formal package. And I know you're on a tight timeline on that, but I
I
think.
guess I have a question with that. Everybody's talking about aluminum clad. Is fiberglass an option? The exterior fiberglass, interior, and integrity window, both of these windows, whether it's Marvin aluminum, extruded aluminum clad, or the fiberglass, are both, to quote what it is, it's very historical. They're traditional design to maintain the architectural integrity of historical buildings. Now, since this is not a historical building per se.
Well, it kind of is now. It meets the standard at this point. You know, it's 67 years old. So
Right, I guess what I'm asking is, I have the great opportunity to try to maintain the budget, and these guys make the design, but I have to make the budget, make it work. I'm also working with the city on the second story.
Yeah.
So there's a difference in cost quite a bit.
Yeah.
in those.
in the past, though, I don't believe we've allowed fiberglass. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's been a wood or aluminum clad wood has been a very consistent decision of this body.
Yeah, and yeah, if we do it once, then it's, it creates a
I wouldn't
precedent.
be able to throw that out.
No, it never,
Good question.
it never hurts to ask, for sure.
I want to get back to let you have a discussion about two things. First of all, fake mullions or divides, the snap-in kits versus in-window real divides with 6 different panes of glass or whatever the division's going to be. That really is a budgetary issue to go with the real thing. Obviously, there is some public money in this overall building project, so that makes it a little bit different too in trying to determine that. I'm trying to recall, I think in the courthouse, there were allowed, for lack of a better term, snap-in kit mullion divides for a lot of their windows for just a recent giant public building. We have them here on City Hall.
Yeah.
So I guess I would advocate for, but ask your opinion of using the trim kits. And it may also then lead into my second question. You brought it up, Mr. Chairman, was the feeling that 6/6 may not be the right design approach here for some or all of the windows, and there may be a different divide. That's a lot easier to accomplish with just the snap-in kits. They come in lots of different varieties, and that's not really a cost thing or a big deal in my experience with any window manufacturer. But obviously, if you're going to have them manufactured in the window, it is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that's probably a good reason for this to be part of the formal application. Because personally, I don't like the fake mullions. I think they, to me, they just it's just a really weak attempt to look historic, but to me they actually go the other way because although they try to mimic actual mullions, to me they just kind of look like putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, it just basically, to me they look fake, and I just don't think they me personally, I don't think they belong in a downtown historic district. But again, that's my opinion.
Sure, I'm good. So there's the ones you propose aren't snap-in, they're built-in. And these, just to be clear, those are built-in, right? And it's the same thing that's in this? Are these snap-in or,
I think
snap-in is like literally you take out. and you
I think
snap
that's
it
a
in.
really good point you raised. So maybe we'll just use real mullions and divides versus fake is probably better than snap in or not snap in.
It's individual window pane.
At the end of the day, they all
These are
snap in.
these are not individual windows.
Yeah.
These are
Right.
fakes.
Even, I mean, those are, I've seen someone put individual window panes in and
We absolutely do not have that kind of budget.
Right, yeah. Well, I would, I guess, yeah, we could make a choice between the two, at least the snap-ons or snap-ins are, I just think those things are awful. But again, that's just me. I'm just, I'm not trying to speak for anybody else on the commission.
Yeah.
No.
I think I would, just as a counterpoint to that, I think because this is part of the City Hall Annex, and it is partly using public money at that, I think that some middle-of-the-road compromise, which it sounds like what you're leaning toward, I think I would be more favorable to that. As you point out, going really to a truly traditional mullion with individualized window panes is cost prohibitive, probably. But we certainly don't want to put something in downtown that looks cheap, essentially, either, and I'm sure you don't either. And so I think thinking of the precedent there, what does City Hall already have? Are there any other buildings in the downtown that have something similar that might be able to be replicated? Something like that might be a way to look at it. But I'm not familiar if there are anything else in the downtown. There might be, though. I haven't looked that closely.
The courthouse.
Oh, yeah, the courthouse, right. You didn't mention
Yeah.
that, so.
So I think probably having we have a small little detail in here, but, you know, maybe having a little bit better detail and maybe we could work with the applicant to show some of these windows are proposed to go 9/9. These windows are 4/4 or whatever they are. And here's how the mullion or divides are going to be manufactured into the window. They're really applied to the window, but, you know, it's kind of hard to see here.
Manufacturers have sections and isometric views showing how it's put together. We can include that.
With aluminum, you can almost do anything.
Yeah.
I would think today we could make I don't personally think the City Hall fake ones look particularly bad from the outside. They actually look a little worse from the inside. But I do think with today's technology and the way window manufacturing has come, since these have been put in, they do look better than these today.
Yeah.
They can look worse, but
Yeah.
they can also look better. So I think the intention is to make them look, you know, the same or better than what's on here.
So you could get a sample.
We can bring samples.
Samples.
Sheets and give the detailed specifications on the Marvin.
Yeah.
And then like the 9/9 versus 6/8, we can bring in actual windows to show you so you understand exactly what they are.
Yeah.
A couple.
Is that,
The city just
Mr.
needs to
Chairman,
decide
on
what they-
some
we just
windows
put
you
it in
don't
what you
like
guys
6/8?
want. So if you just tell us what you
Yeah.
want.
I guess, I would say, generally speaking, if I were, my preference would be that they were just, that you didn't have the mullions period because of the, the vintage of the building and the design of the building. That said, I certainly, understand what Jackie was, talking about in terms of trying to unify the campus. So, I
These are
mean,
9s.
what's that?
These are 9/9.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
trying to look like that.
Right. And just for clarification, Matt, I understand what you're saying is that, but this is, the HPC is not the city. Okay, the city is, that's why they're here and I'm not a part of the ruling body. So that's why they're having another set of eyes look at this. So, but just as like on the record, let's not beat up the people who put these windows in too badly. I mean, I'm sure their hearts were in the right places and they had a very strict budget. I'm not going to say who did it, but I'm just saying.
The one thing that we do is we're trying to match these windows with a better little better quality. And I am on the same side as Jackie with this because there's city money and there's coax money.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to save money on both sides.
Right.
That's why I suggested the fiberglass. And I'm trying to get the most economical and appealing for everybody here. And I think a lot of, just like back to Matt's point, is the city has to decide on the second floor windows too. So what we decided, Mr. Delaware and Cohatch has to come together to present you on this one.
Basically, we're gonna go with the same window all around the building because it would be ridiculous not to. So,
So given that,
Yes.
I'm glad we got right to there. And here's a picture of 4 or 5 different sizes of window openings today, as it exists today. So a 6/6 wouldn't necessarily look right in some of these window openings, in my opinion. If you're going to do it, probably a 4/4 or 2/2 might look better. But then there are other window openings that are, similar to the size of here in Chambers, that where more divides might look better and also fit into that campus theme that Jackie's kind of describing. So is there any kind of, without going ad nauseum through each window, I mean, is there any kind of direction? I heard 6/6 just kind of looks a little too colonial for the age of this building. Haven't heard any other more direct comment than that. Is that, so do we just throw out 6/6 or work with the other divide?
Well, and I guess when I said 6/6, I was generally just talking about the multi-light, window panes. So, generally, again, to me, that's, a little incongruous with, the architectural style of the Gazette building. But again, I do appreciate, you're trying to unify a campus, and, the buildings do have some similarities. I mean, they're not exactly the same architecture, but they're certainly similar, of similar construction. Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I think it would be, 45 windows, that's a lot. And at some point, you're going to have to, if you are going to go with the multi-lights, if that's what you're going to present, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to put in each opening. So is that something that you would be able to have figured out before the next meeting? Yes. And because I think that's, an important detail. It's probably, to me, that's probably the most important detail that we're discussing it, because I think the pergola, it's not attached to the building. It might visually be, the most obvious, thing that you're going to be doing or that you would like to do, but the windows are permanent for all intents and purposes. So I think that's a detail that really needs to be, done right.
So if we can have some samples, a little better diagrams, cut sheets, and then maybe just go elevation by elevation and show which window goes in which opening.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
That'd be nice.
I'm going to say something about the windows. I've sat here and listened about, the different types of windows and everything. First off, thank you for investing in one of our downtown buildings and making it, the life of it, the longevity of it. I'm new to the Historic Commission. It's been like a year, so I've been kind of quiet. I feel that I know we have to stick with the guidelines of the history and everything with the windows, but I feel like we need to kind of give with the longevity of the product that they're putting in. Obviously, I feel maybe of a 2-and-2 kind of panel window, so kind of simplifies. I know that it will still match the same style, but I'm open to other products to see the difference between the two too, because I think saving some money on a product that would last longer might be better. So that's kind of, and I know, maybe that will entice more people to renovate some of these downtown buildings. I know a lot of owners that are trying to sell their buildings, and that could just open avenues for our downtown as speaking on the younger generation. And maybe we'll see more people wanting to invest in those. So and I don't know how we can do that on this commission, but definitely opening an avenue for a new product for windows would be great. So.
Kind of two thoughts from staff perspective. That's the guidelines are pretty clear with respect to the materials of the windows. I appreciate everything you just said.
Yeah.
I do. And we've sat in this room and had hours of debate about materials. Those two can certainly tell you. So two thoughts. One, I'd hate for this project to get caught in the larger discussion vortex of should we change the guidelines to add a fiberglass material or some other materials. But if this project can maybe bring in a sample to move that discussion along, and then kind of like the vestibules, we decide as a city and as a body, can we open it up to more than just wood and aluminum clad wood, or are there other kinds of materials that might be cheaper and still, I think, should have the same look?
Well, they last
better
longer.
maintenance, they might last longer. But these guys got to pick some windows and go too. So I guess on the other side, they know aluminum clad wood works. It fits the guidelines and get their divides. And I think they pretty much know that.
Just there is this thing, they are black too. So black is different than white. Black will look, it's hard to tell black.
Well, you're talking about the vinyl, you mean?
Or the color of the window itself.
Or you're talking about just the
So if
aluminum?
you change materials, fiberglass,
Yeah.
aluminum and stuff, it's hard to tell with a black thing and different versus a white plastic.
Well, the black, there's no question in my mind, the black will look way better than the white, the windows.
The fiberglass is painted with an acrylic.
Yeah.
And the aluminum is painted with a different kind of cayenne paint.
Yeah.
And both of them are resilient to fading and, but back to what you're saying is, I can bring in samples of both.
Yeah.
Whether it's a longer discussion, at least everybody can see that fiberglass and the aluminum.
I think it'd be good. My only point is I don't want you to come in
to-
July and we say, well, let's table this case because we're not sure about
Yeah.
fiberglass yet as a body.
And that's the thing, I mean, that would actually, there's a lot more involved to changing the standards than your timeline is probably going to tolerate.
And I understand it, but I can give that
Yeah.
to you. as
That would
a-
help, sure.
That's
Yeah.
Address her point.
Just some, I think we are fine with the one that we presented, and the fiberglass would save that money. But I do agree with your point. To be honest, there is no way in heck I am able to do this project without the city's help and economic development to restore this building. Every time you can find something that looks the same, that saves other people money in this downtown, will only help your cause to change other buildings around. So therefore, I think it's a good long-term thing to look at something like that, as long, if you could do both. I think there are sometimes ways to save money and do both. But there's all kinds of buildings that people want to do down here. And these are really construction costs are right now.
The
Yeah,
fiberglass.
you need to find a way to save some money.
And it's going to be
25%?
Pardon?
25%, is that what you said?
25% cheaper, it's going to give you the same amount of light.
Then you can do the vertical door, right?
Nice.
But it's, the light, you're going to look at.
There was a purpose, no.
You're not going to see the difference in.
Yeah. No, that would be helpful if you brought them. Yeah.
That's something I'd like to see, because we're gonna pay for the second one, the taxpayer money's gonna pay for the second floor, so.
That's why I brought it up.
I think saving money where we can always makes sense, if the product looks the same.
And the fact that this is partly public funded, that gives us that break, so we're not necessarily setting precedent at this point in time if we were to go that avenue either, because we can say this is publicly funded in part, and we have a responsibility to protect that money, obviously, too, so that gives us a room there.
I don't know. I disagree.
Yeah,
I think the standards are the standards. If you are going to change what is acceptable, you got to change that in the standards. You can't do a one-off that, essentially ignores what is called out in the standards.
I'm thinking in terms of potential for variance to those standards, though. That is a possibility. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but it's something you could consider.
What's the total budget of windows on the project? Ish. I mean, you probably know.
I know, with the second floor, I think it was 50,000.
Yeah, we're over $100,000.
So you're talking substantial amount of money. And I'm just saying, look at them. If you can't tell from, why wouldn't you continuously improve on reducing the cost? I mean, you can't tell a difference.
I think it's a valid question to ask. I'm just saying it's gonna require a change to, as far as I know, it's gonna require a change to the standards, and that's gonna
does it take to amend that?
That's the guy to ask there.
Well, like I say, I think you're in a several month process to do that, which just doesn't fit their timeline. It's a valid question to ask, and something just like vestibule, something that we should probably take a look at the samples that he brings in, let that guide the discussion, and then you'll make your decision, variance or no, on this particular building. And then we can bring back and have a discussion on the greater guidelines, because there's definitely points there in economy scale. If it truly looks exactly the same and, saves some money, then it's certainly valid to take a look at that.
Can I bring in,
I know these guys are on a tight timeline though, so.
I can have them in tomorrow.
You're hearing a sampling of it. This is exactly why I raise a point. It's a bigger discussion. Not everybody's of a unified mind to move away from wood or aluminum clad wood.
Well, I can bring them in and you guys can, it's not our decision, so it's your decision, but I'll have your samples up here right away for you guys to look at, so you can look and touch and understand that difference. And then I can even have a window expert come in and talk to you about the historical value and the life of them and all of that.
I think if you could have samples, because you're right next door, if you can have samples just brought to my office, and anyone at HPC wants to stop by when you can and take a look at it, that over the next couple of weeks, that would probably help facilitate the conversation.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
All right. Moving on, now we get into the stuff that Dave predicted would be the most contentious.
Why less windows? Windows are always good.
All right.
Hopefully I'm wrong.
Item 6, the front patio design and signage. So the two options presented. I guess my first question is, I know which I kind of agree with the city, but what is your preference on the two options?
From Matt's perspective.
He has a different one than me.
Well,
so.
okay. the guy that's controlling the cost.
You guys need a minute over there?
To be honest, we're showing both because we're happy with both.
Okay.
They'll both work.
Yeah.
The first one is more functional for our members. It creates more shade 3 different times a day, where the second one, is a little bit more of a focused area of shade. It's going to be where people are out there working. But they both serve the purpose of what we're trying to do.
And just, that drawing up there with the slots of the second one where the cross beams go.
Yeah.
They actually have to go the opposite way because the sun sets east to west.
Yeah.
So that is wrong on that draw. They'd have to go the other way. If you notice on the first one, they are drawn.
Right.
So otherwise it's
Doesn't really do a whole lot.
So basically the second drawing only gives you shade on the east side of the patio between 1 and 4.
If the sun ever starts setting in the north, there you got something there.
So I just want to point that out.
Yeah,
The slots are the
that's an important detail.
You don't ever want to do umbrellas?
No, because you get to think, we get storms coming through here pretty quick. It could be 6 o'clock, and if they're out there, they blow around. I have no one to go get them. We're not staffed past 5:30. Members go in. So we might. I don't have it in Worthington, for example. I've never put umbrella up yet. My goal is to make it as self-running as possible without sending, running up here to do something or sending someone to do it. But I'm not saying we wouldn't do it seasonally and put it up, but it's not in our plans currently.
Dave's just a phone call away. He looks right over here.
Yeah.
Put up sun sails, man.
Yeah.
Maintenance.
It's on the second one, the umbrella.
The sunset or retractable awnings were the next proposal.
That'll be a lot more expensive.
I think number one's the only option if you're not going to use umbrellas, isn't it? Otherwise your space is going to be very usable.
You just get you have the north part, but I like, from a design standpoint, I personally prefer one because I think it sets your downtown off in a very awesome way. I think it's grander. Me personally, he's more than, he could kind of go for the I think it's grander. It's more like, holy crap, what's that? Like, I want to go there, and this town's awesome, right? That's the layman's branding version of that. But
the only issue with one is you can't see the sign except from straight ahead.
Yeah, but I think the patio is our sign. So like you'll add, people will see it like that front and then in Delaware, you're gonna know where you're driving. I'm not as worried about that. You're gonna know what that is. You're gonna look twice probably.
Were you serious about the chandeliers under the pergola?
Outdoor chandeliers, not like the old, but outdoor chandeliers that have some detail to it.
Yeah.
Little twinkle at night.
I personally give this number 2 because it's a patio is sort of by definition temporary improvement. I know you want to be there forever. I hope you're there forever.
Sure.
But things change.
Sure.
So it's easier to undo 2 than 1 from a cost standpoint to me. I understand what you're saying, but I also see millennials and even old people like me sitting out in the park with no shade at all, and you get the laptops and the phones, and then they work fine. And some people like the sun, and some people don't like the sun. So
The back part of the patio has sun. Like,
and then you'll have the back patio, like a loading dock.
That front first one, see how it doesn't connect the building, so there's sun.
Right.
Sun
Yeah.
on those
Yeah. You'll
over.
get, and it's going to come through the slat. So
I'm not trying
whatever.
to. There's different opinions. I prefer 2 point I'm indifferent, so that's why.
This to me really frankly looked more like I hate to even open this discussion, but looked more like a canopy to me. And you guys aren't aware, but we've had lengthy, much like Windows, canopy awning debates. A canopy being defined as a roof-like projection, flat, horizontal from the face of a building. I know you're not attached here, so it's technically not a canopy, just for the record, but it looked more like that to me than sort of what I would call an entryway fee.
Is it because of the size of the wall, or is it because of spacing on this?
I think it's because it goes across the entire front, much like some of our old aluminum canopies. But again, they may not share that opinion. The board, they're the ones that will make the decision.
Go ahead.
I was gonna just offer my 2 cents worth is one of the things I've been on here, 7.5 years now. I try as best I can to separate my personal aesthetic opinions from things that I think fit within the standards. And I will say personally, I like option number 1 better, but I also, in this case, I think that aligns with how I think it fits in with the standards. Because clearly a pergola is not really conforming to any historic. We don't have pergolas historically in the downtown, but I like the blending. You've done so much to maintain the historic feel of the building and maintaining the building itself with this kind of little in-your-face splash of modernity, and I like that. The reason I really like that option number 1, though, is because in our standards and all of the downtown storefronts, you have to have a footboard that goes along the sidewalk, and the little retaining wall, or whatever, not really retaining wall, but the decorative wall, I think really emulates that. So that's one reason I kind of like that better, because it evokes the same thing we see at other buildings in the downtown, the solid area beneath the windows. But also, I think for me, the lines of the building, if you look across there, I mean, it's a lower building. The lines are very horizontal throughout the whole building. And when I look at number 2, it looks like a marquee to me, projecting out there. It doesn't seem to fit with the lines or the overall shape of the building. So to me, it looks just kind of garish, frankly. So I really have a strong preference for number 1 as a personal level, but also in terms of how it conforms with our existing standards. That's my 2 cents worth on it. So.
Well, more than my brand opinion I just gave. Yeah.
I would also agree with Aaron, option 1, kind of showcases what you've done to the building to restore it. It's more inviting. If you're open 24/7 too, I think it also adds more security versus just a walkway. It kind of makes the building look closed off. So security for your co-hatch members, I think, they would feel safer on that patio being opened. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I like 1 better as well.
It's done.
Do you have any comments on signage? I noticed the auto-oriented sign is not in option 1. I don't know if that was just done intentionally or just accidentally left off. The brown one up top.
The blade sign. We felt like the scale of the sign, even though it's parallel to the road, it's pretty large. So the splash of that with the the shallow return being green on that sign to get a little bit of pop color is visually enough of a draw to see a sign and read. Even though it's not perpendicular to road, it's still acting as a sign that is a functional sign.
And it's non-illuminated?
Not illuminated. We haven't designed actually how it works yet, but it would probably have a little
Indirect.
yeah uplift from in the front.
How does the board feel about that? Typically, in the guidelines, we call for signage to only be attached to the building, but.
Well, I
You
think
can bring up-
if the pergola is built, then that's going to present a unique challenge to doing that.
No question.
And, you know, I definitely, you know, hear what you guys are saying about, you know, the number one is option as far as I'm not really strongly in favor of either one in terms of one over the other, but I guess on signage, would it be an option if you did go with number one to just put something similar to what you've got facing William Street on either end so that it's, you know, it's actually visible from the traffic?
Either that or you do, speaking out like in terms of, like, you go to the newsstand sign, the whole point of newsstand was to give over the building, so we could talk about that one, but could you do some sort of like, because you see the side of the building this way. I'm all for it. If you want to put another sign, I'm figuring out how to put a sign.
So actually, can I get clarification from staff? I remember somewhere a long time ago, we had a discussion of there's some restrictions on signage on the sides of say, canopies or things of that nature.
Yeah, that's why I tried to lightly touch on that just a moment. Typically, if it is an awning, which is the only thing allowed, on the side flaps of the awning, if you will, side pieces of the awning, only an address is allowed.
That's right.
This is neither an awning nor a canopy, it's a pergola. But fairly traditional, on the awnings too, we do, now they're attached to the buildings. On the front face of the awning, and sometimes on the flap, is where signage has been allowed in downtown. Again, this is neither an awning nor canopy. I think, in my opinion, to grant this sign, as it's shown here, you're granting a variance to the guidelines, to the sign code, and to the sign standards. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that's what you'd be doing. So, and you'd have reasons. It's, I think, very distinguishable from anything else we have in terms of precedent and worrying about that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well,
we're also going to put a sign, I guess.
Where's the, I mean, on the old Bag of Nails, on their, you know, canopy or whatever that you want to call that, is that not on the top of the canopy?
Well, yes, it is on sort of their.
It's really not on the building, though.
I don't even want to call that a canopy, but on their structure.
Yeah.
It's in their front yard, and that is, that's neon.
Yeah.
Didn't you put a sign up in the corner, like number 2?
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to
Up in the
suggest.
corner by the window?
The brown.
The plate sign.
Yes, you could do that. That's what the guidelines would call an auto-oriented projecting sign. Many of the private sector call blade sign. That's fine.
As a secondary one?
Well, you're actually allowed both. You're allowed more signage in the downtown. Most people don't understand this than you even are in our other commercial districts. It's how you put it together and how it's designed that matters more so. So you could do that brown one that's here, and you could do a pedestrian-oriented one too. The one here actually would require variance for exactly the same reasons that I just explained. Typically, they're attached to the building. You could even have wall signage that's usually flat and put on a building. In this case, you just don't have much room. You got windows there. You don't have much room to do that.
I mean, I think the only real preference I have on all these is I love the sign on the first one. The first one, I really love the sign. That's like the only thing I really, this whole package that I care most about. I think that sets off like what we do like the most.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm not opposed to adding a second sign on the second story on that corner. Because they're different signs. I mean, I think it would work if you guys wanted that to show up. We can study that.
Well, I mean, if you guys, it's really, do you guys want it? But
So you're saying this sign that reads white to me right here? yeah, I guess it has green returns or whatever. This sign plus maybe the brown auto oriented. That's what you're saying.
I would prefer just the first one.
Yes.
Without oversigning it.
Having it up there high, to me, that's the city's building, or that's the city's offices there.
Well, that
Right.
is-
So I-
Well, that and I learned, we had to light it, and I just waited 6 months to get a bulb changed up on a 40-foot ladder, because.
That's the other thing.
I mean, it's like, there's our issues with yanking it.
Yeah, we're not trying to talk you into an auto-oriented sign, so.
It sounds
We
like maybe
prefer-
you have some decisions to make.
We prefer, we want number one with the sign as it is.
Right.
Number one.
And then the rub on the first option though is that will require a variance. So that would need to be part of the packet, obviously, but,
But if you were to put in place a pedestrian-oriented projecting sign coming off of
Mhm.
the pergola, like is in option 2, the lower of the 2, would that require variance?
I think so, yeah, because it's not
It's still out
attached
on
to
the building, right?
Technically, we just detail it in the report.
I think
Well,
it
there's
would be
connected
lost.
wire between the.
I just don't think there's, as a practical matter, it's just, if you're gonna have this stuff in front of the building, there's one place for a sign
Right.
band between the first and second stories.
agreed.
As a practical matter, and you're blocking that basically with a pergola, so you almost have to put it there.
Yeah. So I will say, just as an aesthetic choice, I personally really like the idea of a projecting sign somewhere more than I like the flat sign. I think it just looks more historic, and there's a lot of precedent for that around the downtown. Most of the signs we have.
They're cool, it's a cool sign. You have some very cool signs like that,
Yeah.
like Restoration, the other one I
Yeah.
took some picture of.
And I think that would look more in line with the history of the building and more in line with just the look that the rest of this design is going for. But again, that's not my choice to make necessarily.
I mean, one thing we could think about is the projecting sign on the second floor being the D relative to the second floor being the city hall offices. I mean, that is a point that has crossed my mind as we're sharing the space without it, being the official mark of the city of Delaware. Up there's it's just the D that we use as projecting, and they have Cohatch down here on the first floor, and we're together in the building.
Keep in mind, we also kept the 1818 and the Gazette.
Yeah.
Very physical. With option 1
And
and
that's,
option 2. Well,
and that's right above the main front door, correct?
That's at the top.
Oh, no, it's up top.
It's at the top.
I see it.
did I get that?
Yeah, that's a. So it sounds like, like, what do you need to get option 1 approved? Just, is that it, or we have something else?
Well, you would have to get you
Sounds
would
like
have
it-
to get approval. That would need to be part of the formal application.
And
And I would almost, unless you really want to tie them together, I wonder would it make sense to have them as two separate items on the packet or,
For the patio?
well, yeah, just, I guess you could always, I don't know. There seems to be some,
I think they would have to be separate because they would have to be requesting a variance for the sign, whichever option they choose, sounds like.
We've incorporated variances as part of an overall package before, so to me, it's easier just to say, this is, here are the
They can be
windows,
spelled out in the
sort of the way we've done it here.
okay.
We'd spell it out. Is there any preference on, this is showing sort of a stone landscaping wall? Is there any preference on material or that, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Delaware Blue Vein Limestone that we have throughout downtown, but we also have throughout the community, and we've used it everywhere. They're giggling because I'm sure Matt doesn't want to use it, but it is pervasive in a natural material here. Typically in downtown, though, we tend to be brick oriented. Yeah, so.
Well, first of all, if you go with pergola, option 1 is the intent that it would be the planter as shown in the drawing or some. To me, I don't know, I kind of like the limestone better, but, brick is prevalent, but,
the floor is bluestone, right?
Are you doing the blue
On the floor?
on the
What's the floor?
That's what we're
So
showing.
somewhere, right?
blue stone?
So bluestone is what we used at Worthington next to limestone. I think it looks great. It's a classic material. And then the wall is just what do you have for the wall of stone?
Well, the church next door is bluestone, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it certainly,
It'll last 100
you don't have to look very far to see, you know, a precedent for using bluestone.
I just tell you that material comes in a lot of different styles and shades. So I would bring in a sample of that. The other choice is sometimes these planter walls are built out of integral brick,
Yeah.
more like a retaining wall.
Yeah.
You can think of it that way.
Pick up at Home Depot.
The way I always think about it is you build a wall with CMUs and you put what we call lick and stick or cultured stone, if you want to use the term, on the front of it, which is the way I would suggest it looks better and it looks more like the real thing. But
Well, I would certainly,
it's a detail that's going to be prominent.
yeah, well, I certainly think, you know, bringing in a sample of the material and, you know, some detail on what the, you know, proposed construction would be is definitely going to be needed.
It comes in about a million different.
Trust me, I know. And they change the name every week or so. Keeping it easy. Is lick and stick okay? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, we can choose.
Okay. So then it's getting the facing and the color choice.
I think
And then we always do, like, maybe to bring, like, our lighting out here, if you notice it, we usually use low voltage again. So we used really high-end commercial low voltage lighting that would just create ambiance lights, so not very, it would just light the patio without. So we might bring a sample of that back in and show you what we used at other places. But it'd be like down lighting on the poles or something like that and kind of make the building just ambiance lighting that way.
Yeah, our goal with this was, if you guys gave us direction, it sounds like we're leaning towards one. If that's the way we go, we can really dig into it now and start to really get some more detail around it for you guys in the next round. Instead of doing that for both, which would have been a little
Yeah.
crazy.
You know, I mean, I will say too, if you know, do something like that and it's something that your members utilize, you know, frequently, it certainly would bring a little more life to that stretch of the block that, you know, pretty much, you know, looks pretty desolate most of the time, so. Cool. It would be nice to see some activity there.
Should see a lot.
But yeah, as far as the, you know, the color of the you know, finish for the planter, I mean, to the extent that you can try to be somewhat sympathetic to some of the examples downtown, again, right next door.
You should have your own color created for this project.
I'd say it's
No, not good.
Pickle green limestone. All right.
So seven was it?
7.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any other questions or comments from commission members on 6?
Not at this time.
Okay, moving on to item 7, the rear southeast ADA entrance signage. I mean, to me, if it's within the standards, is that something that the thought was that would be administrative approval?
Yeah, this definitely faces the parking lot
Yeah.
for this building and could be in compliance.
Any comments or concerns from other commission members?
No.
Okay, that was easy. Did you guys have anything else beyond what's presented in the packet on that? Okay. The west elevation signage. So I think staff has pretty much communicated, you know, that painting the brick and applying vinyl is not something that would be acceptable. So
Can I ask a question on the vinyl? Just, we did that aluminum clad, it's aluminum.
It's called aluminum
It's aluminum. It's actually, we did it in Worthington. It was the hardest thing ever to get it until they saw it and they put it up. It says coach at the chimney. All you do is walk up and peel the aluminum off and it's gone. There is no impact. That's why we went with that instead of.
how's it applied though in terms of what, yeah, what kind of, I mean, So I guess the concern would be though, if the adhesive over time, is that going to have any reaction to the, to the brick or the, mortar where it might leave a residue over time?
It's made for exterior use, so the impact on the exterior is next to nothing.
You take in the material, it's actually used in historic downtowns all over the country. So it's trying to replicate that, like the coolest thing about the downtown to me is you see like this art on the wall, beehive, whatever, or this or that. It's meant to emulate that without retaining it. And they could doll it down and they could do different things with it. So Worthington originally hated it and we brought it to them and as soon as we put up, it's about now they're trying to use it other places. So.
I mean, that's certainly something that we've not, we've not discussed or approved in the past. It might be something that staff might need to, take a look at and see if they can get some information from other communities that have allowed it and what the pros and the cons of something like that might be.
Because this is the sign. This sign is really important to us to get approved right away because if you notice, you have to build a pergola before you hang a sign.
Yeah.
So we get this one approved. I want to put this up right away as a coming soon sign to get some buzz going here pretty quickly. I don't think we're necessarily against upgrading a board sign that printed to make it look like that. I just think that to me looks like you're faking a fake sign versus actually applying an aluminum thing on top of it. It makes it look like it's painted real. But both for our intents and purposes will work. So
But the other question,
there is an option out there.
Another question to staff though would be, is that going to require a change to the standards? Since I don't think we've ever had anything like that.
Yeah, again, just in my time of staff time, we talked about two major things tonight already to bring back to you. I just don't think we have time to talk about alumifoil or any of that in terms of the guidelines. We can talk about it in terms of this building and, variance to the guideline. I think they have two options. One of them's viable and fits the guidelines today, assuming that we can get it down to 20 square feet. Otherwise, it requires a variance from you. And I don't have I'm just guessing how big these are. They don't have dimensions on them, but I think more importantly that is, then they certainly could bring the product back in and we're gonna have those conversations. But which one of these two, one's a little bigger than the other one? Obviously, probably more than 20 square feet if you count the white as part of the sign. I don't know which one they particularly prefer. I'm guessing one because it's just louder and bigger, but I'm just guessing. But
well, I certainly would think it's got to be within the allowable square footage, regardless of what method is used or what type of signage is used.
And I would remind you, whenever we talk about variances, there are 6 main principles that are part of the packet for standards for when we can grant a variance, and so it has to meet one of those for us to be able to go in and say, yeah, we're going to give you a variance to the standards. And yeah, doing something like that whole option 1, I don't really know that would fit any of those 6 because it has to be that there's no viable alternative, it's not economically feasible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that it would fit any of those reasons to grant a variance. Whereas
white is actually a wall coating the sign on the letters. There's your.
Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's never been used before.
I actually like number 2 better.
And it's close, I think maybe it was a little oversized for that square footage. We could shrink
Get it
it down
close.
to it looks like we can, arrange it so that.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be the key, is keeping it within the square footage, but then also that if you're really intent on the aluminum application, that that isn't contrary to what's in the standards. And
We'll do it at the board, whatever we need to do it at. I don't know if you've ever done something where you do a temporary variance with a beta test to approve it for future use to see how it holds up. But
now you're back to the vestibule.
Too soon.
That started 3 years ago. We're still talking.
okay, we're gonna go with whatever you need. I want this. I really want this sign up. For the next 7 weeks.
Yeah,
So
I mean, a signboard under 20 square foot, I think it would be an administrative approval. That would be my thought. I don't know about the other commission members.
Although I'd like to know more about that product long term, maybe that is a viable.
Going forward, I think that's a good alternative. If you're not allowing paint, you're not allowing vinyl, the aluminum would be a good step for you guys to go forward.
It's in Worthington, you go see it, you can see how it holds up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm intrigued by it because I mean, I like the old ghost signs and things like that too. But my concern is, what are the long-term effects? Has it been, really proven to not have any long-time residual effects, to the material that it's adhered to?
So is there, besides that, like, if I would like to get this sign up as fast as possible. So does administrative approval mean that I could go do it, get the sign permit?
You turn it in with a specification, and it means that the chairman of the commission is not here tonight, and myself have to agree it meets the guidelines.
Got it. So that's what, to me, this sign needs to go.
Terry, you go through Diane to get my approval.
Yeah. So if we bring you a spec of a sign that meets those requirements with a print that make it look like that, that's what
That would be the most expeditious way to get it done.
I want it up as fast as we can.
That would be the way to go, yeah.
And again, the chairman is not here, so
I understand.
I don't know how he would.
If they just follow the guidelines, then
We don't really have it.
Well, that's,
Well, I'm
The
kind of
vice
out of the
chancellor.
guidelines there because I like option one. I think that it draws people's attention. I feel like people will take pictures in front of that. I think so.
yeah, I understand, but the thing is, it's like everybody has things that they really like that, as a one-off is great, but then it creates a precedent. And at some point, when do the standards, cease being relevant, in terms of, guiding the decisions of the commission? And that's always my concern about, doing one-offs or doing variances that are way outside the, intent of the standards.
I personally really like the cool factor of both of these.
Well, I think the cool factor is lost in option two. I think then it just becomes a billboard, which they built and painted on old buildings back then to advertise, which we have uncovered a lot of those. And I think it's a cool factor to our downtown. So on that point of standards, I would say, option one to me is a good foundation for maybe in the future of a variance, I guess, in our standards with buildings that have side walls that will bring that attention. I mean, back in the day, that's where they put their advertisement.
To me, just a little Cody thing here. So I mean, 'cause technically, if this was owned by anybody else, the sidewall would not be due a side at all. Okay, but because we own it and it faces our parking lot, I can interpret the zoning code to allow a sign to go here regardless of how it looks. And you can think of other examples in downtown where it just may not be the case here. And again, it's distinguishable because this is a campus and it is City Hall, and I think I can make a case that's different than just a normal business building. If you're suggesting that, take the building across the street, has a blank wall on the second story that faces the public way, that this sort of thing could be, and I think it has a ghost sign. I mean, that might be the Beehive one. We haven't really done a whole lot with the ghost signs versus billboards. Good point you raised. My problem is the side of a building that isn't on a corner isn't due signage under our zoning code. Again, I can interpret that because it's all one owner here as a parking lot sign, and that's how I arrive at the 20 square feet and that sort of thing. But just food for thought.
Are you saying zoning doesn't apply because it's the side of the building?
They normally wouldn't be allowed to have a sign on the side of a building.
Period.
If you face a parking lot, the PNC Gazette building is a good example. They happen to have their own parking lot, one of the few examples in downtown like that. And they have a secondary door there, and they can have and I believe they do have some form of parking lot signage right there to direct people to. I'm not sure, maybe Chase Bank has one, maybe Buns has one. Aren't a whole lot in downtown, I think about. But, and that's pretty universal throughout. It's not just downtown thing, it's throughout our commercial districts. You gotta be on a corner and have signs on both sides of the And I think we're also restricted to no more than 3 signs on a building, but if we liked option 1 as opposed to 2 on the patio, you only had 1 sign on there, so you're okay. It's just in the vein of variances and unique, this is unique. I mean, it's a unique condition. So I think you have adequate cover to make some decisions there.
Well, we can't really decide on it tonight anyway, because
No,
it's
no,
not
no.
a formal
You'll
application.
decide
So
next
it's,
month.
it's gonna come down to, if you want to do it quickly, there's a method of doing it where you can get an administrative approval. And if you want to do something,
You could do both. You could get administrative approval right now for the backer board sign and then come in with the Lumafoil and try to change it out. The backer board sign, it's just not going to cost you a whole lot for that, in my opinion. But it's your money.
Is that 2
The
separate
way
signs?
we
the new
it'd be
stand?
done really sturdy, so they cost, that sign on the backboard done our way would be at least, what, $2,000?
Could be.
I think there are ways to do it that may not cost that much, but it's up to you. I mean,
Got it.
we've had aluminum foam core signs. That's a backer board. It's a little cheaper way to do it.
So what I'm hearing though is that there's no chance for option 1, by the way, you take off extra reel about, that wouldn't go up, I don't think, but there's no
That's
chance
the
for
cool
1
part
period.
about it.
I didn't like it, but they probably, sure.
Actually, I was thinking you loved it, or didn't love it, yeah.
But it is more of a selfie. That is like a pictureable moment with a black window behind it. It looks like a piece of news. The whole point of that design, I think, is it's a newspaper. Like the whole thing is open. It's like it is.
Weddings, whatever.
Yeah.
You got
Jackie,
it.
can I ask you a question? Is the dumpster going to be in front of that?
To the right of it.
It's going to be just to the right of it. It's going to be close.
Yeah, so it might make sense that it does.
See what that bike is?
Dumpster's going to be where motorcycle.
Where that's where it's going to be. So that's what I mean, the dumpster's going to be to the right of that, as you're saying.
So your selfie moment will have to crop the dumpster out? Is that?
I heard there's gonna be a really pretty brick wall on the left side of the dumpster. Which
Just
Yeah,
It's gonna add dimension.
yeah.
so there's.
gonna add.
All right.
So just to draw the attention, I'm sure you've already seen this, but the 6 criteria that says that a variance or waiver shall be granted only if the commission deems that at least one of the 6 following criteria is met. That's on the very last page too of the application package. I'm assuming you've seen it, but I just want to draw everyone's attention to it again.
Okay.
Because that is, as a matter of precedent setting, we try to stick to those as much as possible so we don't seem capricious in our decision making.
So what I heard is you do administrative approval on number 2 if done the right way, and I just have to bring a permit or basically get it approved by. That he's going to take it to Diane to get it to you so that I can go build it. Is that what I heard?
Then we have to get with the chair, vice chair of the commission to make sure he concurs with that.
Yeah.
And also make sure the size is right.
And then at the same time, during our next session, if we want to go in parallel with variance and the rationale for doing something different, we could simultaneously.
And the reality may be with the 4th of July holiday, you might arrive in time at the same place, just saying, because I have people in and out. Diane's not here this week. Chair's not here, so.
Got it. Okay. Good to know.
Any other questions from the commission? Any other questions from the applicants? Well, we appreciate your coming in this evening. I think everybody is, pretty excited about what you're proposing to do in general. I think it's gonna, breathe new life into a building that could use it. And I think it'll bring a lot of activity and excitement, to that area of downtown. So, appreciate all your time.
Yeah. Thank you for your flexibility. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Next order of business, staff comments.
2 things. Kara Herring will be your new commissioner. She'll join us. She's a licensed architect with Dave Kara Architects. They're the ones renovating and going to move the business into what's known as the old Stratford Church at 23 and 15, and doing a really nice job of that.
Beautiful.
They have at least state tax credits, and they might have federal. I think they have state tax credits on it. So that's exciting, and that's a discipline, at least as far as an architect stamp, that I don't think we've had on the commission for a while. We've had design and that sort of thing. So I know she's excited to come on board. And the second thing is and I know you guys are looped in, but the comprehensive plan for the community continues to move along. Some of you, I think, applied to potentially be on the committee, et cetera. Council set the committee, and we're set for a first steering committee meeting coming up in July. So participate in that process, regardless of whether you're on the steering committee or not. Really makes no difference, but participate in that process individually and as commissioners, and encourage your networks to do the same as we tilt up a website and go out with public involvement and that sort of thing. So just while I have you here, I'm going to put a plug in for that. That's all I have.
All right. Next item, commission member comments and discussion.
I'd like to begin. I actually want to just offer a statement, because actually Roger Koch, who was our chairperson and commission member for 20-some years, I believe it was, or close to 20 years, obviously resigned 2 months ago. And I thought this would be an appropriate time just to give some acknowledgement of the lasting impact and contributions he has made to the city, to the citizens of Delaware, and to the commission itself, as one of the original designing members that really came up with and really fostered many of these standards that guide us today. And so it's not really my place to discuss the merits of his decision to resign, but I think it's important to acknowledge that contribution that he's made, because one of the things that has struck me over the years that I've worked with him on this commission is that he always took a very serious, took his responsibilities, I should say, very seriously, as a balance between the historic preservation that is our mandate and the importance of respecting the commercial interests of the downtown business owners and of the longer term economic health of the city. And I think that's something that deserves to be acknowledged, because I think he navigated what is often a very challenging course at times between those two poles. And from my perspective, that is not a zero-sum game. And I think it's something that's important to say at this moment, since he has stepped down from this commission. But that legacy that he has helped craft, I think, is an important one for us all to remember, because it's not a zero-sum game. Historical preservation and economic growth and economic fortunes are really united, because the downtown is the core of our city. And what makes it so unique and such a rich fabric is that it is redolent with history. It's part of the soul of our community. And that's something I think Roger understood, and we didn't always agree. More often than not, we did. And I think it's a good time for us to stop and take stock of that and remember that what we're doing here matters for the long-term health, not just of the history, but also of the vibrancy that has made it this dynamic place in the community and in our state. So if you're out there, Roger, I just want to say thanks.
Well, would it be in our purview to have a motion to produce a statement of appreciation into the record?
I think you certainly could do that. And then the other thing we've done for long-standing, particularly for long-standing commission members on planning commission and even this commission, is we've produced I'll use the word proclamation, certificate proclamation to the efforts of those kinds of people. We've brought them back to a meeting to present that to them, and had all the commission members sign that sort of item. So I might suggest doing that as well. And I think that might be a nice, maybe bit of closure, as opposed to just a resignation letter that we always.
Well, I agree with everything Aaron just stated, and I think that would be a wonderful, as you say, way to acknowledge that and bring closure to that legacy.
Well, I'll
make
it happen.
All right. Do we need a motion for that? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I agree 100% with everything Aaron said. The one thing I also would add to that, though, is I am disappointed that, the thing that actually brought that decision, which I wish I could have talked to Roger before he made that decision. Not that it would have done necessarily any good, but I do share his frustration and essentially the reversal of a couple of decisions, or I guess in one case a non-decision by this commission, by the city council. And I do have concern that, going forward, that we not drift away from the intent of the standards that everybody, and I I really appreciate that Aaron, brought up the criteria for a variance, and I, just think we really need to make sure that we are all familiar with what the intent of the standards are, and that yes, sometimes the standards can seem somewhat onerous to the people that are trying to run a business. But I think, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think a lot of the success of downtown is directly related to the efforts of the Historic Preservation Commission and the standards that they uphold, not in spite of it. And I do get concerned that sometimes there's a perception that the HPC is a roadblock to people running a successful business. I think the HPC is a bulwark against a drift away from the standards and the things that make the downtown unique, enjoyable for people to participate in. It draws people from out of town, and it's not an accident that it is what it is today. It's because of a lot of hard work by people like Roger Koch and other people that have invested time and treasure downtown. And I just really hope that going forward, that everybody within the community, on the commission, on the council appreciates that the standards are the thing that really ensure, to me, I think they ensure the long-term viability and the continued improvements downtown. It's so easy to drift away from that one exception at a time until at some point it's no longer the downtown that that we've been striving to preserve. So sorry for going on so long, but I just felt that was important to say. Any other comments? All right. Next regular meeting is July 25th, 2018.
Does anybody know they're not going to be in attendance at that?
I think I'll be here.
Besides Jay?
I was supposed to leave on vacation on the 25th, but I'm going to push it off, I think, to the 26th.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I was supposed to, but it's only for a few days, so I think I can push it to Thursday.
Great. I expect I'll be here as well. All right. Since there are no other comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and thanks to city staff.
Nice to meet all of
It's
you.
very nice to meet you, Jackie.
Thank you for all your help. We appreciate your action.
Come back again.